Hey guys, Theo Gogos with the Infinity Real Estate team here at Keller Williams. Today we are discussing some of the necessary documents to show a property with buyers. This includes the buyer's agency compensation agreement, which is a contract, and then there are two attached disclosures, both the fair housing disclosure and the agency disclosure that all need to be signed prior to getting into a house. Just for everyone's knowledge, open houses are an exception. You don't need any of this signed to go through there. So kind of just jumping right in here, first and foremost, I always highlight this. It is a legally binding contract. If you have any questions, do contact an attorney, or you can ask me any questions. I'm happy to answer those for you. So the first line here is going to be where your name would go. If there's two buyers, both buyers' names go there. The broker being Keller Williams, and then the agent being me, Theodore Gogos. Right here, you're going to see the duration. You can do this agreement for as little as a day just to get into a house for a showing. You can do it for a year if you want to. It really is up to the clients and the realtor themselves. I typically go somewhere between 2 and 6 months just because, if you do a 1 day contract, we see a house today, you want to go see another one Thursday, we're signing yet another one. So depends. I like to do whatever makes people comfortable. But yeah, that is the duration there for how long this will be active for. The next line here that's important is compensation. Compensation's always been negotiable. I think last year when some new laws went into effect, there's a lot of misinformation and people didn't fully understand what was going on. So compensation's always been negotiable. It always will be negotiable, like anything in life. So right here, you would initial that exactly that. Fee for service always ranges. You can call it standards in this industry, but it varies. It's totally negotiable. My typical fee for service is 3%. I like to note that typically on these transactions, I am able to loop the commission rate into the deal. A lot of times, sellers do actually offer the buyer's agent commission, whether it's 2.5%, 3%. That does vary. So at all times, I do try and loop this right into the contract. I mean, typically buyers have enough closing costs to worry about. They don't want to have to worry about paying their realtor come closing time. So I would say 90% of my deals, I'm able to loop the full commission rate into the contract itself. So in a sense, it gets looped into your mortgage, and the sellers do pay for it. It comes out of the purchase price there. So that's pretty standard. You can do a flat rate. Very rarely seen that. You can also do a retainer. Have yet to see that as well. I don't want you to think that I'm, glazing over any of this stuff. I just want to kind of keep this as brief as possible, go over the major points, and then, you can reach out with any questions afterwards. Some fair housing stuff here we'll come back over in a second. Just going to scroll back down here. The second line you have to initial is the Home Equity Theft Prevention Act. Really, they just want to know if you're buying the house as a primary residence or as an investment property. The thought being trying to give these, primary residence buyers, these first-time buyers, every opportunity to, get a leg up compared to, some of these investors that are buying 5, 6 houses a year, whatever the case may be. So that's all you're saying. You're disclosing what you're buying it for. It's another thing to kind of help with some fair housing stuff there. As we scroll through, you're going to see your name. My name goes here. Effective date. Typically, like I said, typically you can choose as long or as little as you want to go with this. This contract is relatively easy to get out of, to be honest with you. If need be, you can always call my boss or whoever realtor's boss you're using. Just say, listen, things aren't working out. We'd like to cancel this agreement. So I have had to do that. Help clients actually get out of their deal with current realtors. We can discuss that more if necessary. That's kind of a unique situation. So sometimes I get people asking, Theo, why am I signing this? Well, I can explain it. So when you first have a conversation with somebody, you're just a customer. Signing that agreement actually makes it so you become a client, and it gives you the following fiduciary duties. There's an acronym called Old Car that we use. Kind of just goes through, what's expected of us once we sign this documentation. So it does have a good, definition in terms of what a fiduciary is. An agent, working on behalf of another. I'm a professional in the real estate field, almost like an extension of you, helping you out throughout the process. So certain things I owe you. Obedience is one of them. I kind of compare this to the customer's always right type of thing. If you have one opinion on something, I have another. Always going to go with you and what you think. However, I will tell you the good, bad, and everything in between in terms of what to expect with that decision. Ultimately, you guys make the final call as the clients. Next one here, undivided loyalty. That just pretty much means that I'm representing your best interest and your best interest only. If I'm representing you as a buyer, I'm only focused on us on the buyer side. I don't care what's going on the seller side of the deal, other than making a deal happen, of course. But that's pretty much what that is saying is, I'm only working on one side of the deal with one client typically is the buyer or the seller. There is a thing called dual agency where you can represent both the buyers and the sellers. I don't typically do that, and I'll explain why shortly. But the big reason while we're on this is if you represent both the buyer and the seller, you can't give the act of undivided loyalty to both parties. So that's something I try to avoid whenever possible. Full disclosure, that can be a couple of different things. We go see a house together and, there's a big crack in the foundation's failing. If I have that knowledge, I legally have to tell you that. Other stuff where, say something comes up on my end, one way or another, I have to tell you everything that can, affect the deal in one way, shape, or form, whether it's something to do with the house, something to do with the forms, something to do with this, something to do with that. Like, full disclosure is necessary at all times. Confidentiality. This is just pretty much saying that if you tell me anything sensitive during our meetings, phone calls, texts, anything like that, I'm not going to go back into my office and gossip. Like this, what happens in these conversations stays in those conversations. You can feel comfortable telling your realtor things in confidence that will not leave the room. In general, that's what it goes for. Anything I tell you guys too that it's sensitive, you guys just keep it between each other. That's how it should be. Accounting, this just pretty much means that like I'm going to keep records of all of this stuff. So like you ask for the buyer's agency agreement, I have this right here to provide you. I keep records for numerous years per our license we're supposed to. So that's pretty much all that one is saying that we're going to keep records of all this stuff, contracts, any addendums, all that good stuff. The last one is reasonable skill and care. This just pretty much means I know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about it. So if you ask me to go sell your commercial property, I don't deal in commercial. So while my license allows me to do that, it would not be providing you reasonable skill and care to take on that commercial listing. I would likely refer you to somebody that has more knowledge. In terms of residential, buying and selling, that's my bread and butter. 100% have the reasonable skill and care to do so. So when you sign that agreement, the above buyer's agreement, you get all of this. Before then, you're just a customer. You don't owe these fiduciary duties. So sometimes people ask, hey, why am I signing this? Well, you get the following here, which I think is really important. The only way this agreement helps me, it protects me, because 99% of this protects the buyers, the consumer. The one way it does help me is if you go see a house and you try and backdoor a deal and cut the realtors out of it. This does protect me there. If I showed you the house, I am entitled to my fee for service on that transaction. So something to consider there. Let's see. So I just went through that. Agency disclosure, I do like to mention that this is not a contract. This is just pretty much putting in writing who's representing who. So on any given transaction, there is a seller's agent and there's a buyer's agent. In this case, I have buyer's agent highlighted because that's kind of, this is the side of things I'm going through. So like I said, any given transaction, there's a buyer's agent, there's a seller's agent. Broker's agent's not relevant in this market, not normally, so I'm not even going to bother with that one. Dual agent is what I briefly brought up before. It's when you represent both the buyers and the sellers. I typically try to avoid that because I don't think it's you can't give the fiduciary duty, specifically undivided loyalty, to both parties when you go that route. So I do try and avoid that. One thing that is common in this area is dual agent with designated sales. That just pretty much means that in my situation, if we go see a house together and the other agent is a Keller Williams agent, while we both work under the same brokerage, we're representing different parties on the transaction. So that happens more often than not. This office being the number one real estate office in the area does lead to that sometimes. So that one I do, you're still protected. I can still give you the undivided loyalty. Very comfortable doing that. So that's really all this is saying, is explaining who's representing who. There's a seller's agent. There's a buyer's agent. There can be dual agency. There can be dual agency with designated sales. This goes hand in hand with the agreement. So this is explaining who's representing who. The compensation agreement is explaining how we get paid to do that fee for service. So same thing here. My name, Keller Williams, buyer's agent. Advance informed consent to dual agency in case we do cross that path with another Keller Williams agent. Mark the buyer, name and date go here. So that is the agency disclosure. Fair housing and anti-discrimination. It just pretty much means I'm not going to treat you any different based on race, ethnicity, sex, military status, national origin, sexual orientation. There's a lot on the list. There's a lot of protected classes on the list. Just pretty much means that I'm going to treat you the same way I would anybody else. So as we go through here, I like to highlight certain things. You have the right to file a complaint. I mean, if you feel as though, you were done wrong in one way, shape, or form, there are avenues to go down. I mean, you can go as far as going after someone's license if that's something you want to do. But that's why, me personally, I take I pride in what I do, and I do make sure to follow everything at all times. And the truth is, this fair housing stuff, it's you just be a good person. I think these should be followed in everyday life as well. Personally, Just be a good person and you'll never get yourself in any trouble is my thought process there. Same thing, just my name, Keller Williams here, your name goes there, date. Again, this is a disclosure, it's not a contract. So just briefly as we go back up, agency agreement is a contract. It kind of explains how we as realtors get paid for a fee for service. Does go through a few other things. I'm happy to go through in a little more detail, explaining the fiduciary as an agent, the old car acronym I mentioned to you guys, buyer's agency, disclosure, and the fair housing disclosure. So that is a basic rundown of what needs to be signed prior to showing a house with a realtor via a private showing. I'm happy to go through, some of these in a little more detail or answer any specific questions. This was just more to give you a basic idea of, what to expect. So I hope this was helpful. If any questions I ever had, you can reach me on my cell, 716-345-0437, or via email as well. So thank you so much. I appreciate the time. Have a good rest of your day.